Hey everyone, welcome back to NodeRun.com, the online IDE and runtime environment for Node.js, where full stack development is 10 times more productive. In our last video, we created a to-do list application. And in this video, we're going to connect this application to a live database. My first step will be to make a copy of this workspace by clicking the fork button, and I'm going to call it to-do list DB. Click fork. That gives us a new workspace. And now I'm going to go ahead and create a database. Now to create a database, I'm going to switch over to the database tab and click the Run SQL icon. Here I can type in or paste the SQL code that is needed to create the tables for our database. Let's go ahead and paste this over here. And by the way, if you're not very familiar with the SQL syntax for creating tables, you can always use a visual tool. A tool that I use sometimes is called Heidi SQL. It always helps me to construct the SQL that I need. In this particular case, we're creating a very simple table called to-do, and it only has one column called item. So let's go ahead and run this. Cancel out of the dialog. And once I expand the tables, I should be able to see my to-do table, and I should be able to see that it has one column. And now that the table is in place, I can refer to it using the PJS Query API. So I'm going to wipe out the hard-coded list of items and use the PJS Query API. The PJS Query API is very convenient because I don't have to establish any connection or anything like that to a database. There's an inherent connection to my database that is already configured, and all that I need is the SQL statement to fetch the records, which is simply select star from to-do. So that fetches all the records from the database and puts it into our list. The list is then put into the grid automatically. So now the hard-coded list is gone, and we're ready to move on and work on adding and removing records. And before I do this, I'm going to reorganize the code a little bit. So because there's going to be a little bit more happening, I'm going to create some additional functions. So we're going to create a function called add item. And let's take a parameter. We'll take a parameter of grid, and we'll take a parameter of new item. So that will be one of our functions. And whenever we call this right here, instead of calling display.grid.push, we're going to move that over to the separate function. And over here, we're going to just call add item and pass to it display.grid and the new item. Modify this here. So now all that we've done is we've just reorganized it so that the add functionality happens within a separate function. But now before we add it to the grid, we also want to add the item to the database, and that's done with another PJS query statement. So PJS.query insert into to-do set question mark. Now question mark is a parameter marker, so we can pass another parameter which will provide the record that we actually want to insert. And the record here is very simple. Simply we'll insert an item with the value of new item. So now we're ready to test this little change. So I'm going to go ahead and save and launch the application. And we should be able to add items. So let's say clean house. Click add. Let's modify this and say clean the garage by basketball tickets. So we've added a few items, and if I click refresh, you can see that the application is completely reloaded and the items have remained in the list because they're now stored in a database. The last thing that we need to do now is add functionality to the remove button so that it also takes the items out of the database. So let's go back to the code, and we'll go ahead and add another function. We'll call it remove items. Now the reason I'm calling this remove items instead of remove item is because just a little bit of forward thinking where, just in case down the road we add checkboxes instead of just one button where we're removing one record at a time. Maybe we'll have some functionality that removes them all at a time. The effort here to remove multiples is pretty much the same as just removing one. So we're going to accept a parameter called grid. This allows us to move this statement into the function, and we'll go ahead and call remove items. pass in display.grid, and then come down here and take out the display. So at this point, we've reorganized the code so that the removal happens in a separate function, and we're ready to add our SQL. Now, the first thing that we will need to do is just retrieve the records that need to be removed. And for that, we'll just use grid.filter, and we'll use ES6 syntax here to retrieve all of the records that have the remove flag attached to them. Next, we can process each one of the records. So let's use records to remove for each. And for each one of the records, we'll run PJS query with an SQL statement to delete from to do where item is equal to this question mark, and that's a placeholder that will refer to record.item. All right. So this should be all that we need. So let's go ahead and save. And I'll go ahead and launch. And let's remove one of these items. And we can see that it's removed from the list. Now if I refresh, I can also see that the item has been removed from the database. This application is now fully database driven. So the last thing I'm going to show you is that if you ever wanted to verify what's currently within your database, simply switch to your database tab, right-click the database table that you want to query, select query, and the SQL statement for listing all the records in that database table will appear. You can simply click run and you see the full list. Thanks for watching, everyone. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you have a NodeRun space that you'd like us to feature, or just an idea for the next NodeRun video that you'd like us to create, simply comment below with your idea or a link to the NodeRun space.